Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, head coach of Team Canada's women's national team, Shannon Winzer.
Thanks for having me.
So happy you're here. So the way we start things off with a few random questions. So are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So with it being Halloween last night, what was the best Halloween costume you saw?
Geez, my son went as a referee. And he was not very imaginative, but the best one I saw like an alien on a kid's back.
Okay.
And there was also a kid dressed as a fridge. Those were the best ones. My kids weren't super imaginative, but there were some really cool costumes out there.
Excellent. All right. So most interesting place you've played a volleyball match in?
Kazakhstan.
Oh, wow.
Just because there's no way I would have ever have traveled there had I not been involved with volleyball. We were in Almaty in Kazakhstan.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Holy cow. All right. And favorite movie?
Rudy.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Yeah, I'm old. I remember that one. Yeah.
Okay. That's probably one of my favorites. And I think it says a lot about what's important to me. If you knew my favorite movie was Rudy. I always, recommend it to the young players to watch. And when you watch old movies and the production just looks a little bit like old, I feel like now I'm aging myself by having them watch it.
Yeah, it's sort of like, being from Canada, watching the old Canadian TV shows, you see the mic, sometimes in the shot and everything like that.
Yeah. But growing up, I was for some reason as a kid, I loved to watch Bonanza. And that was a movie show that was like well before me. It was like the olden times. Oh, yeah. I loved watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. Heck of a job, with the VNLs, man. You guys really can't get much closer than what you did. We're just, as a Canadian, so proud of you guys.
Thank you. It was really, it was a really storied journey. And, you kind of have that underdog, it's a great story. And unfortunately, it wasn't the ending that we wanted. So to be so close, it's hard to know, if being so close and losing was worse than not being close enough in the first place. I still kind of toy with that. But yeah, we got really close.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and sort of a sidetrack there, sort of nowhere near relatable to that, but my daughter's high school team, they just lost the conference finals. They were up, we were the underdog, 200 people in our school, 500 in theirs. We, that other team only lost one set all season. We are up 2 sets, 5 points away from the championship, and we lost. They panicked, and it was just like, I was like, what would have been worse, just to get swept or to be that close? Yeah. And it's just, it's tough to see. I
love being an underdog. I do love it. I think that, you have nothing to lose when you're the underdog. But when we got so close, it became, we had a lot to lose. And I think that some of that is the experience of being in that situation. That was the first time we had so much to lose. Yeah. Prior to that, we really had nothing to lose when we were working our way up the ranks,
Right. Here you were back in the, upper teens, and now you cracked the top 10. It's like, so close. Yeah.
But, yeah. When you're number 18 in the world and you're playing against top teams in the world, let's go out there and ball out. We have nothing to lose here. Right. But once you get into that number 8 and, your qualifiers come down to one game and it's a high stakes game, there's value in the experience of being there before.
Yep.
And we hadn't been there before, not the athletes, not the staff.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So let's go back to the beginning. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. It's the lower mainland, just outside of Vancouver. Very proud to be from Poco. I actually live on the same street that I grew up on. My parents live pretty much across the road. When I moved back, my husband had stayed in Australia, so I had to move, close to my parents to get help. And and so I enrolled my kids go to the elementary school I went to. They're now going to the secondary school I went to. So I am very Poco proud, but this is where I live.
Excellent. And now, when did you first discover volleyball?
I was in grade 5. We played grade 5 back in the day. School volleyball was a lot bigger. Club volleyball wasn't very existent. Yeah. I had some amazing PE teachers at my elementary school, Mr. Wiles and Mr. Cousins. You're not going to watch this, but hey, I remember you. And they ran a really great volleyball program, and I started when I was 11 years old.
Oh, wow. And now, many years later, playing professionally and playing at university, coaching now at the level you are at, what is the hook volleyball has on you that, you're still, it's a part of you?
I think it's the ultimate team sport. I think you can play other sports, not to throw them under the bus, but soccer, basketball, lacrosse, you can have a superstar
Mm-hmm.
and you can win games off the back of that superstar. I think in volleyball, it's the ultimate team sport. You're only good as the action before you. You rely so heavily on your teammates, and the team dynamics and the how people mesh, and that team concept has always been what's drawn me to sports, team sports. But
Mm-hmm.
I think volleyball is the ultimate team sport.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, after high school, you went to UBC. What was the reason you chose UBC? Was it for volleyball, or just if they had volleyball? They had volleyball and you
Yeah.
went there.
People write like I had some really great volleyball career. I think people also throw some untruths in there too. I went to UBC. I originally went to SFU. I tried to play softball at SFU, wasn't super successful. And then I went to UBC because my best friend went to UBC. I wasn't recruited there.
Yeah.
I played junior varsity for I think 2 years, and then I forced myself onto the varsity team. I remember walking into Doug's office. Someone had just gotten injured. I'm like, man, you've got a spare uniform. You've got to give it to me.
Oh,
And
shoot.
I forced myself onto the varsity team. I didn't play much. I think I played I might have dressed 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
I did not have some storied career at UBC. I was someone who I think peaked really late.
Mm-hmm.
I was very much a mediocre player. So after UBC, I went traveling through Europe, and this is where everyone says I played professionally.
Right.
I went to Europe. I played in the English league, but I had a real job. Like, they paid for us to play volleyball, but I didn't make very much money off of it. And that's where I started to, I think, get better at volleyball.
Yeah.
I was in my, around mid-20s. I grew through the English volleyball system, and then I went back to Australia, and that's where I started to play at a higher level and then play for their national team. But through university, I kind of forced myself onto that team. And so the story of Rudy, when I went to UBC, like the Rudy the movie, when I went to UBC, and I said to Doug, like, hey, you've got a uniform, like let me have at it. It was kind of a fun reference for my friends about, now we get why you like that movie, Rudy.
And now, did you go to Europe to play volleyball, or just as you travel and volleyball was there?
I actually went backpacking for a few months. I met my now husband. He moved to London and I followed him. It was not at all sports driven, but while I was there, I started playing volleyball, and I realized there's this whole league. And I mean, I'm a lot older than people realize. Canadians going pro wasn't that common.
Mm-hmm.
You had a couple who played in Puerto Rico, but going pro wasn't that common. And so I was in England, and they had a whole volleyball league, and I got involved with Polonia, which is one of the top clubs there. They're all Eastern European or Polish. That's why it's called Polonia.
Uh-huh.
Played a few years there, but I did not go there for volleyball. I'm so glad I found them though. But I didn't go there for volleyball.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I had, Vicky Savard on earlier, and she was talking about, playing overseas, and she got 500 euros for the month. That was that made, and that didn't even include, lodging or anything. And it's a different, it's not rainbows and unicorns when you think of playing professional volleyball.
No, I think I don't even remember. I was never even had a contract. I don't think I got my lunches and my gear paid.
Yeah.
I had a regular job if I wanted to eat. So if I wanted to eat outside lunch. So, it was, I'm so grateful for it. I've made some amazing connections who I still am connected to now, but, everyone loves to say I played, pro volleyball, but it's not what pro volleyball is now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And then when did the coaching bug bite you?
Interesting. I think for a lot of players, we all coach throughout like our playing career. We do camps, we do little bits, maybe go back and work at your high school a little bit because you love the sport. I've always believed in giving back. In any sport in my community, I think it's important to give back because sport's given me so much. But I was coaching National League in Australia. Oh, sorry, I was playing National League in Australia. I had decided to finish playing because I was having my second child. And the team I'd played for, I'd captained, all their players went to a different club, and they were all of a sudden like the worst team in the National League where we were historically 1 or 2. And all of a sudden we were the last. And one of my longtime friends and the team manager for that club said, you should coach. And I'm like, oh, I thought about it, but really, like, I don't know, but I didn't want to walk away from the sport. And he really pushed me to take over this National League team, who happened to be in last place. And underdog story again, like, well, I can't make it any worse. I might as well do it, right?
Right.
Um, and we had this phenomenal season. We became national champions that first year, and then we won every year after that. And then when I left, it continued with success. So I would say I always thought I might coach, but I never really, thought this is my career. This is what I really want to do, until I had a very close friend really push me and maybe saw something in me. And I'd say the start of my career, that's really what it came down to. Some mentors and some really important people in my life who just pushed me in this direction, seeing something in me that maybe this would align. So that's how I got into it.
Oh, wow. So you didn't even go the path of assistant coach to head coach. You went to that first chair.
I got thrown into it real quick. My degree's in French grammar. Like it wasn't like, I'm not even sports science. Like I can conjugate a mean verb, but I got thrown into the first chair. And then, I'd coaching National League in Australia for a couple of years because I just had my second child. That's how I remember when things happen.
Yep.
And then I was pregnant with my third when I started assistant coaching with Mark Barnard when he was the head coach of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I did a World Grand Prix with him, pregnant with my third,
oh my Lord.
And he stepped down. And so I'd been coaching about 4 years, I want to say. I think, yeah, three or 4 years when I got the head coaching job with Australia. So I'd done a little bit of assistant coaching, but I was in that top chair right away. So you can imagine the amount of learning that I had to go through in a very public way.
Oh, absolutely.
In National League, then was a big deal in Australia. Not as, social media wasn't as prominent back then, so that was okay. But once I became the head coach of Australia, I'd only been coaching, part-time for 4 years, and then I became a full-time coach in 2017. But still, those first 3 years with Australia, I learned a lot in the very public way.
Yeah, I bet. And now a couple of things off that, first of all, what I've found, since starting this whole podcast and in the volleyball world, coaching is not an easy career. A lot of volunteering, the pay, the commitment you need. And if you have a family, it's not easy.
Yeah, I say like it's coaching poor. Like in the beginning, you're coaching poor. Like I think my gas money was paid for. I didn't make money doing it. So I had a full-time job and I was still coaching every single day. And so you're coaching poor, you give up a lot. And it's really hard, like, especially as I started, this is when I was starting to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's going like, are you kidding me? Like, you're not even making money. Like, and at that time I didn't see it as a career path. There weren't many women doing it.
Yeah.
There was one paid job really in Australia, which is the head coaching job of Australia. And, you just didn't see it as a career path. And so he's like, why are you doing this? And I just loved it. Yeah. I loved everything about it. And then eventually, they created these full-time roles with Australia. I was able to then get into the professional coaching space. And I've been in that now for, 8 years, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, at first you've got to be coaching poor. And, the hard part is if you want to progress your coaching career, coaching can't be convenient. You have to be willing to move, and you have to be willing to take some risk. And that's so hard to do when you've got a family and a partner, and you're already not getting paid well to coach. And the lower levels of coaching, it's such a grind.
Yeah.
But if you want to grow your career, you've got to be willing to move and take risks and not just coach where your feet are. That's hard. So hard.
I bet. And now those first couple of years, what were some of the more challenging things, especially for somebody who doesn't have a coaching background, a sports science background? Now you've got stats and everything else that goes along with it.
I don't remember a time where coaching hasn't been challenging. I think the best thing for me is that that I did get to work with the Institute of Sport in Australia. It's an incredible organization. But when I went to full-time coaching in 2016, I can't remember, around there, I was kind of thrust into the space where I was handed a team of sports scientists. Like I had a physiologist, a doctor, a physiotherapist, skill acquisition, a biomechanist. Like I'm talking Lord. The the sports scientist team, and I had no idea how to work with them. And the cool part was the men's program had one of their assistant coaches, Dan Eilert, was up there and had been running their full-time program for the men for so long, and they were quite successful. They were a top 10 team for a while at this stage. He was an incredible mentor, and Russ Bourgeot, who was the former men's coach in Australia, I remember them telling me, you know, in your first year, say yes to everything. So all the sports scientists are going to ask you for things and want to do things, and say yes to everything. And then you'll learn how everything fits together, and what you should be saying yes to and what you should be pushing back on. But at first, say yes to everything. And I was in this environment where I had to learn how these pieces fit together, but also how to keep this large staff on the same page, with our focus being volleyball.
Right.
However, understanding how the physical, mental, emotional, how they all relate, how we acquire skills, how what I'm doing can impact these things. And it was this incredible learning environment. Load management was thrown in my face real quick. But I am so grateful for it. Like, I had an amazing physio. Her name's Paula. She used to, you know, she did a lot of research on load management. So she taught me a lot. And working in that space was an incredible foundation for me to then work in Canada. And from the volleyball perspective, you know, we would travel with one assistant coach, one stats, one physio, which isn't a big staff internationally. It's it's half of what I travel with now. But that means I had to do a lot of the jobs.
Right.
So, you know, cutting film, tagging film, analyzing it, doing the reports, like, I did all of that with my assistant coach. We would be in a room together doing all of it. Whereas, you know, now I have more staff. So I'm so grateful for how challenging that was. I was thrust into it. I had to learn on the job, but I had amazing mentors, and I couldn't hide. I just couldn't hide.
Wow. And then, you know, on the sort of counter side of that, what were some of the highlights, you know, coaching in Australia for you?
Highlights. Wow. I'm very proud of, we built a full-time program, a center of excellence. Now it's named something different since I've left. Some funding changes have happened in Australia. I was very proud of the program we built there. It was a full-time 10-month program, similar to, I've based our national excellence program and how we run and operate that very much off the center of excellence. Very proud of that. The women's program, we went from 43 in the world to number 30. I know it sounds still really high, but we had very much tried to professionalize volleyball in Australia, and we had more players playing pro than ever before. It was a full-time program. I was really proud of what we'd set up there, and just the buy-in we got from the athletes with, okay, we really want to do this. And I mean, Australian athletes were taking really crappy contracts, making very little money on the other side of the world, where you don't get to just come home for Christmas, and they were all in. So we had really worked hard to professionalize volleyball for women there, and I was very proud of that. And I'm super proud of the way I was able to work with the mentors, just how much information sharing there was. And I joke in our office, I sat above the volleyball courts. We had beautiful facilities there too. I'd sit on the volleyball courts, and there was a coffee maker in my room. And then in the mornings, all these staff would come in. Like I said, the former national team coach for the men, the assistant coach, the stats guy. We would have other sports scientists, and they would just come in for a coffee. And around that table, where they had the most informal conversations and some pretty funny conversations, there was such an incredible amount of learning. I had access to so much knowledge and experience. Really grateful for my time there. But I'm really proud of what we did there in that program during that time. It's very different now in Australia, but yeah.
Excellent. And then, you know, you came back home. What was your path to, you know, leaving down under and you know, coming back to Canada?
It was kind of twofold. I was happy in Australia, but there was some funding changes in Australia that I could see that, you know, things maybe were going to get even harder. So I started to look, and I knew they were hiring for the job in Canada. This is in like 2019. And I think it's like the story of my career. I'm going to apply because I want them to know I'm out there. But I don't think I'm going to get the job. I just want them to know, you know, you have a woman who's coaching overseas. And I had never coached university or college. I'd only ever coached internationally, World Grand Prix, World Championship qualifiers, like continental championships. I'd never coached university. So I wanted them to know I existed. So I applied, and I was shortlisted. And I don't know. There was a bunch who were probably shortlisted. Tom Black was obviously in that mix. He got the job. And when Tom was hired, they called me up. It was in February, and they said, "Hey, we're not going to hire you. It's a no, not yet, but we'd like you to come into the program, work with Tom. The future will be you after Tom." And I dropped everything. I literally moved 2 months later, moved the 3 kids and me 2 months later to
wow.
Australia, Canada, took a pay cut. I went from a head coach of Australia to a B team coach for Canada, and got to work with Tom for, a year and a half before he stepped down.
Hmm.
But for me, the goal has always been the Olympics. I think anyone who works in Olympic sport, like that's the pinnacle, the best of the best. And I was so proud of the work we were doing in Australia, but I couldn't see any growth beyond my role.
Hmm.
Like when I was done, I'd been there for 3 years. I had 2 more years left on my contract, but then it was like a then what?
Yeah.
And I wanted to continue to grow as a coach and grow my career, as well as have a chance at the Olympics. And I saw Canada as a chance. I saw I could continue to grow. I was going to be the B team coach. I was going to grow under Tom. I was going to, tackle something new with a higher level team, higher level program, higher level competitions. And we have a sniff at the Olympics.
Right.
I truly believed we had a sniff, and whether it was going to happen in 2024 or 2028, I believe we had a sniff. And so I convinced my husband that he could survive the rain of Vancouver. I don't think he was so certain.
Hmm.
And I moved across with the 3 kids in April, and my husband joined in October. And took a leap of faith. And
Wow.
yeah.
And so, not only, coaching another country, but coming home to coach.
Yes. That is not the reason why I took it. Everyone thinks it is. It's not. Like, I had been in Australia for 15 years. If I had really wanted to move home, I probably would have done it by then.
Right. Yeah.
I love living across from my parents. I'm very close to my family. I love being home, but that's not why I came. I very much, my family misses Australia. I miss Australia.
Oh, shoot.
We're here for this job.
Yeah.
And so coaching Canada, though, it's no greater honor. Like, I am so proud. Like, I was proud to coach Australia. I am Australian, but I'm like a ring-in Australian. I was proud to coach Australia, but I'm very proud to coach Canada. Like, sometimes that national anthem gets me on the line, and I'm like, man, this is so cool, and this is such a great honor. Like, I'm so grateful. I'm very honored to coach Canada, and I'm not sure that it's just a different level of when you're coaching another national team.
Yeah.
When you coach your own, it's pretty cool.
It hits different.
It hits different.
Yeah.
I'm proudly Canadian. I'm proudly from Poco. And I think when you get to represent your country at any level, I think it's a big honor. And I never, on the most challenging days, I want to remember that I'm grateful for this job and this opportunity.
Nice. And then I understand when you took the head spot, you were the first Canadian head coach since the early 2000s doing a national team.
Yeah, I believe the one before me was it Lauren, or was it
Lauren.
or was it Doug? Yeah, it was a while, and I think the last woman was in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so it's been a while. So all that came out when I was hired. I can't say I knew all that before.
Right.
But yeah,
it's pretty cool. And then, since I jumped back into volleyball and then, the VNLs this past spring, I didn't know that you were the only woman coach at the VNLs, which just kind of blew my mind.
Yes. My first VNL in 2021, there was 3 of us. There was Jenny Langping and the head coach for Japan, as well as myself. In 2021, and then Jenny and Langping and the Japanese head coach, I cannot believe I'm forgetting her name, but they stepped away. And so by 2022 at World Championships and every VNL, 22, 23, 24, I've been the only head coach. Now there are other women who coach. Obviously we have the 2 assistant coaches, Tama and Arent for USA.
Yeah.
There's an assistant coach, Marike for Germany. There's an assistant coach for Serbia as well. So there are some women out there, but if you think for even just that alone with assistant coaches, every bench is at least 2 assistants. So it's such a low number, which is disappointing.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredibly, and we talk about it so much. I'm asked so much about it at my press conferences, in media, like whenever media talk to me, we always talk about like we're surprised, and I just like I hope one day we can stop talking about it, because I'm
Yeah.
so disappointed that this is the case.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, why? To me, it makes no sense.
No, especially when you look at, like, here in the States, and NCAA, there's some really fantastic women coaches. Same in the professional league with PVF now, but outside of here, it's like like you were saying, when you go overseas, that's a topic, but you'd rather them be talking about how you took Canada from 20 to number 8 in the world. That's the story. That should be.
Yeah. I find it's always a balance, because number one, I think the USA does a great job of recognizing the value of having that diversity on your bench. And I think they're very aware of it. I think in US, across NCAA and their pro leagues, like, it doesn't happen in other countries as much. So yeah. I really credit to the US with that. But yeah, I would like to talk about volleyball. So it's like, it's this real fine balance. It's like, I don't want to be a sideshow. I don't want to be this anomaly that everyone wants to talk about. But I also want to draw attention to the fact that women should be in this space. We can be in this space. It needs to sometimes look a little bit differently. So I really want to highlight that. And I want to make sure I'm a voice for women in this space, but I also want to be recognized as a coach.
Right.
And so I think I'm forever kind of navigating that balance and that line. And I think about this role itself. It's not easy for anyone, man or woman, who has a family or who has a partner. I think it's not easy to navigate, and just the lifestyle is hard for anyone. So I can understand why there's fewer people, but if I can if at all, just show that this can look a little bit different, it doesn't have to look like it's always looked, then I hope that I can do that. Yeah. So I don't mind talking about it at all. Like, it's just, I feel like it's always that balance.
Well, and I did, part of me is like, do you bring it up? But it's an important thing to bring up. How can you not bring it up, that when you look there, it's, you're the only one?
Yeah, I think, and the one thing I always say, people always ask me, because they always want to hear these war stories about how my peers treat me. My peers are so amazing. They're so respectful. At the highest levels of this profession, people are they see you as a peer. They see you as a colleague. But there are very much challenges of being a woman in this space, or I wouldn't even say a woman, but having a family in this space.
Yeah.
So many challenges. And I think that until we start to recognize these challenges for women to get involved at the highest levels, it's not going to change. And I see so many programs where we want to mentor women and put them in the system and place them into these higher level roles, but it's a system that isn't set up to support us. Yeah. So until we actually put money in to support the women who are there, or to fix the system, how long have we been talking about women in coaching? Like, as long as I've been coaching, we've been talking about how there's no women in coaching. Yeah. So I just think there needs to be more on fixing the system and supporting the women in the system before we try and bring more women into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back on your coaching career, what advice would you go back and give your younger self from what you know now?
What would I give myself, like, last week? I think what I know now. There's some really big. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, and I still struggle with, is really coaching true to yourself. I think early on in my coaching career, I felt the need to act like I had all the answers, and I want to do everything because I want to be seen like I'm the holder of the information. Let me do everything. Yep. And I learned the hard way early on in my coaching career. It meant I wasn't getting the most out of assistants and people who worked with me. They probably didn't feel as valued as they could have in the beginning. And we weren't at our best. And now I really pride myself in having learned from that and really having a collaborative approach on how I work with staff and how well I give them ownership and engagement of their areas. But I had to go through this process of, it's okay if you don't know. Yep. It's okay if someone thinks someone else has the answer. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't know right now, but I'm going to get that answer for you. Right. Sometimes it backfires. Sometimes you get people who then second guess your ability to be here. And I just kind of wear that. So my younger self, I would just say, be confident in who you are, stay true and genuine to who you are, and just be open and honest and accountable with what you know and what you don't know. And I very much adhere to that now. Like that's how I coach. I think the other thing is surround yourself with great people. I live by that. And I think, I look at my younger self, I wish I would have figured that out sooner, is know your people, surround yourself with good people where you can be your vulnerable self, and they're going to support you and encourage you, and, I keep my circle fairly small, but who you surround yourself with matters. Yeah. So I think those are my
All
two
right.
two biggest things I'd tell my younger self.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. And
There's
now
probably
you,
so much more.
I'm sure. Now, how would who are some of your volleyball mentors or just mentors in general that you'd look back and it's like, wow, they were key for me.
I believe heavily in mentors. I've had lots of mentors throughout my coaching career, and I call myself a collector of people. So they've all supported me in various ways throughout various stages of my career.
Hmm.
Right now, I rely very heavily on Glenn Hogue. Obviously, famous men's volleyball coach for Canada. I actually spoke with him yesterday. He's an incredible support. We'll talk X's and O's, but we'll also talk the challenges of the role. I work very closely with Alison McNeil as well. She's a Hall of Fame basketball coach for Canada. Those are currently two people I lean on quite heavily. My mental performance coach as well. Roger Friesen. He's another one who's worked across multiple sports. I think there's so much learning across multiple sports. I try not to stick to just volleyball when I'm
Hmm.
talking about mentors and influences. Um, but I struggle to say I'm influenced by someone like Phil Jackson or someone,
Yeah.
coaches I've never met. I've read their books. I'm amazed by their careers. They're incredible, but those aren't the people who have influenced me. The people who have influenced me, who I've got to know personally, who understand me, who've challenged me, those are the people who very much who very much has influenced me. Russ Bourgeot from the men's national team in
Yeah.
Australia. Um, these are people who very much influenced my careers, and just it always came from a place of caring. So once
Hmm.
we've established this trust and care, they can challenge me on so much, and they make me. They either pick me up when my confidence needs it, or
Yeah.
really challenge me when I need it, and be like, hey, why'd you do that? Do you really think that's the best way to go about that? And I'm like, oh, well, how would you do it? And just be able to bounce ideas off people who,
Yeah.
as Glenn would say, have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people who want to give you advice. And I always try and listen because I always think there's something you can sometimes pick out from everyone. Um, but the people with skin in the game who've like been in the arena, who know about the high stakes environment and the challenges of our national team context, those are the people I very much lean on. Um, yeah, I very much lean on them. And whether it's volleyball, basketball, those are the coaches that I'd say, especially over this last quad, have been invaluable to me.
All right. It's funny you mentioned Glenn because I was just talking to Kavika Shoji yesterday, and
Yep.
at the end he said, Barry, you should get Glenn on. It's like it's just such a small volleyball world. Everybody knows
Glenn's amazing.
everybody.
Well, Glenn's amazing. And I met him when I first came in 2019. I just asked, I want to talk to him about load management because he's like this guru.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I really want to see what you're doing. He right away starts sending me plans. And I presented at the men's VNL in 2019. I was like fresh off the
Oh
plane.
wow.
I was like, so I went and presented. I met Glenn in person. And as I said, I'm a collector of people.
Hmm.
Something about him and his knowledge and his presence. I'm like, I want to know this guy. I really want to know him. So they would have like Olympic qualifiers. Can I be in your gym? He's like, yeah, for sure. And over the last 4 years, it's grown to this really close friendship. But he's so open. I was in Arcus last summer. I'm like, Glenn, I want to mic up a coach. Can I mic you up? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So like I'd
Nice.
have him mic'd up in a game. So I wanted to hear what he was saying to players in timeouts. What were his instructions? How
Yeah.
was he adjusting the game plan? But he's just so open.
Oh nice.
Um, and so Glenn is someone you should definitely have on.
All
He's
right.
incredible.
Excellent. And speaking of your philosophy, what is your coaching philosophy? How do you approach coaching? Because you have the old school coaches. I don't think they're going away. Are the yelling and shouting? Terror. But it seems like the coaching styles today are more caring and communicative.
Yeah, I think coaching has evolved, and I think the environment in which we coach is evolved. A philosophy is such a big word. I have my core values, which are build, inspire, and connect, and I try and really base all my coaching off of that. I love building. If I talked about what I love about coaching, it is building programs, building building teams. Like I love that aspect of it. Inspiring is more, I want people to know that it's okay to have big dreams and big goals, and you can chase them, and you can be vulnerable, and you can fail, and you can get up and go again. And whether that's inspiring an athlete, inspiring a team, or inspiring people watching us, I think that's a piece of it. And then the connect, I just think that human connection is got to be the foundation for everything we do. And man, we don't always get it right. Like I
Yeah.
really do care, but I care. I care a lot, but do I always show it? Um, that's the hard piece. That's the piece that you always have to evaluate. There's times when it's easy to show it, times when it's difficult. You have different connections with different people. So I think that's the piece I'm always evaluating. How could I have been better at connecting with that person? And I'd be lying to you and said if I connected well with everyone. No, I've definitely failed at this every year. There's connections I need to get better, and I want to get better. But those are my three main values.
All right. Yeah. And it's, that aspect is so difficult because everybody's different. Some people are introverts, some people are extroverts. And how far do you push? How far do you let them, give them space? Coaching is so much more than just X's and O's.
Yeah, and I think it's your staff as well. I find that because early on in my career I was so bad at staff management, it has been such a focus for like the last 6 years that I feel like I've gotten to a place where I'm pretty good at the staff management piece and connecting with staff. But it's like it's two main pieces is like what drives them. Is it like people? Is it that human connection? Is it the processes, like just the learning aspect and the systems, or is it the performance, like always winning, right? Or winning the game or the competition.
Yeah.
And then also knowing like how they receive. I think there's the corny one of like the 5 languages of love. We talk about more of like how do you receive appreciation, and I'd like to think I'm pretty good at holding people accountable and tell them when they need to be better,
Mm-hmm.
and tell them when they haven't done their job. But am I as good at telling them when they've done a great job? I'd say I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah.
And then for me, it was just words. But it's like, okay, but some people don't receive it. So how do I ensure they know when I say they're doing a good job and just say, hey, that was awesome, thanks for doing that? Not everyone's going to respond to that. So now it's understanding, well, how will they receive that better?
Yeah.
But that connection is everything. We're in a team sport.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
How can you not be if you're not connected, you're not winning.
Yep. Absolutely. And going back to coming in as to coach Team Canada, you knew the program, you were going to be lined up to be a head coach. When you got that word that you're head coach, do you remember that moment? It's like, holy cow, this is my team now.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It was during COVID. Like, man, I had a tough first year. It was during COVID.
Oh God, the bubble.
It was, yeah, well, we weren't in a bubble yet. It was like, okay, 2019, we had a full season. Tom was there. In 2020, we were running like a training center for people who couldn't get to pro because everything was shut down. There were no leagues, no university, nothing. And then around December in that 2020, I was at home, and obviously we weren't allowed to be anywhere else. And the high performance director called me up and said, hey, Tom's decided to step down. We want you to coach Canada. And I was like, just like, are you kidding? Like, this is quick. Like, this is a little bit quick.
Yeah.
And then I knew for a few weeks, no one knew. Obviously my husband knew,
right,
but like my staff didn't know. I was coaching the National Excellence Program, and none of them knew, because they had to announce Tom's departure, which was honestly, Tom's amazing. I'm definitely sad he had left. I learned a ton from him. But they had to announce his departure, and then they announced my hiring, which in hindsight, I think we should have gone through a process. I think as a female coach, as someone who was coaching the B team, I think it would have done me more favors had they gone through a process rather than just announced me.
Yeah.
But I do remember being told, and it was like my heart racing. Like, I was excited, but I also had to, excuse my language, a holy shit moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, okay. All right. So in January, I took over, and, we had some players in Europe, some players in Canada, some players who weren't able to go pro. And then obviously in 2021, we ran VNL in a bubble. My first competition with the team, we couldn't get everyone into Canada because of all the rules. So we had to take whoever was in Canada to Italy.
Wow.
To train for VNL, because we couldn't get our players into Canada, quarantined, prepared back to VNL. So this is my first competition, and we can't even get into Italy the way we normally. We had to go through Atlanta because it was the only way you could get onto a COVID flight, where they would test you. They would test you, put you on the plane, then you can go into Rome and not have to quarantine. So we go to Italy. I bring basically whoever was in Canada to meet the people who were in Europe. My assistant coach at the time was Lauren Bertolacci, someone I'd worked with for years and years and years. So I was comfortable with that. But it's the first year I'm working with Vincenzo and Malia, and he's in Italy. He gets COVID. I met him face to face one day before our first game of VNL.
Oh my
So
God.
I look back and go, man, that first year was a blur, but we had it stacked up against us. Alexa Gray was injured all through
Oh
VNL.
no.
We were in a bubble for 8 weeks. My kids still haven't forgiven me. But yeah, that first summer, I kind of look back and I laugh a little bit because I'm like, I couldn't make this stuff up.
Right. And I guess, I was going to ask you, what was that moment like first time, hearing the national anthem as the head coach, but you had nobody in the crowd.
Yeah. And no one was in the crowd. It was a phenomenal tournament, though. They did such a great job. Because I had coached the B team, I'd been the head coach of Canadian teams. Like I went to
Okay.
Pan Am Games. So I was the head coach at Pan Am Games. I was the head coach at, there was a continental championship. I never actually worked on Tom's bench as an assistant. They called me an assistant, but I was the B team head coach.
Okay.
So when Tom couldn't go, I went.
Yeah.
And I coached like a B level team. So I had already been like a head coach. Pan Am Games was my first competition as a head coach. And that was where the emotions were.
Yeah.
That was that. And I had such a great team at Pan Am Games. Like we didn't win a lot of games, but they were so passionate about playing for Canada. It was such a great experience. Like my very first competition in an incredible event in Peru. I've never been to a multi-sport event. They call it like a mini Olympics, the Pan Am Games. And yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. But that was in 2019.
Okay.
In 2021 was my first VNL, and no one was in the crowd, but it was a cool event.
Wow. Yeah. And speaking of, the team of players you have around you, just watching the VNLs, watching Team Canada at the VNLs, having Shaina on and Vicky, you guys seem like you just all gelled, like just such a great group of women.
Yeah, they're such an exciting group. I think like they really embrace that concept of dreaming big, and they do have a lot of fun. Our mental performance coach has always talked about like remember the joy, and it was probably we take sports so seriously, and but it's our passion. And it was during COVID when everything got shut down, and they were slowly letting kids back to play, and little kids. And I could see my kids play sports, and I was just remembering how much they just loved it. They didn't play for a game MVP or a champ. They didn't care who won. They just loved playing.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that, that was still something we talked about in our team. And I think our team does a great job of embracing that. Hey, we're going to dream big. We're going to work hard. We're going to chase some big goals. But we're also going to remember that we have to enjoy this. And so that human connection, having a bit of a laugh, like that needs to happen. And Shaina runs our dance troupe on the bench. And while that's never really been my style, because I can't dance and it's not my thing, it keeps all of them engaged, all of them bought in, keeps them warm, and Shaina drives that for sure.
Excellent. And now, when you're playing other countries, what I've come to learn is like, I've had a couple of the guys from Hawaii on, and they, when they went to Japan to play, like there's different styles countries play as, volleyball. And I didn't even realize that, but like you have the technical style, you have, the ground and pound. How do you coach against those different styles? Like you have your own style of play, and now you've got to, match up against maybe Japan or versus the US and two different, two different teams.
Yeah, I think it is very difficult. I think I try and keep it as simple as possible, and I want to ensure that we're just looking for situations in which we need to move out of like our base systems. So we want to train like a base system that benefits and complements what we're good at.
Yeah.
And we want to play to that as much as possible. So we're only looking for situations where we need to play out of that, and the other team's going to be more effective if we don't. And I don't think there's as many circumstances as people think.
Yeah.
I think for Japan, they play a very different style of game. Thailand, and they are the most challenging teams to play against because they play so differently.
Yeah.
But playing against, for instance, I'll give you an example. Like we're bunch read block team, right? If a team is really fast to the pins, well, then and we know that we can't defend against it, and they're highly effective in that one position. We're just going to decide to spread. Yeah. So it's okay. What does this team do? How good are they at it? Are we going to lose the game if we don't stop it? Okay. So then let's make this one change. And so I think we try and simplify it that way.
Okay.
But the style of play is, it's pretty cool. That's why I was talking to a Japanese coach the other day, and I said, I do love watching Japan's style of volleyball, because if you look at their statistical game, it's like there's things they aren't very good at, but they so play true to their style and what makes them good. I mean, it's incredible. They really embrace that like style of play, right?
Absolutely. And now, going back a second for, a step, the season. When does the national team come together? Because you have the pro season, and then, you have, when, you have college too, as mixed in there as well. When do you guys get together? Is there a couple of windows during the year, or really just late spring and summer?
No. Yeah, it's so the pro season goes until I think this year it's like May 5th or something. And then the FIV, the international season starts for national teams. And so we'll start usually it's the start of May, and then you go into the end of World Championships, which will be second, like I think it's September 7th or something. So there's a window for the national international season. The window is actually bigger than I think the window is actually October, because there'll be some continental events as well.
Mm-hmm.
And technically during those windows, the players have to be available to the national team if they request them. Just like if they're in their pro season, we respect that.
Yeah.
So we don't see them throughout the year. Our athletes will start to trickle in April based on, maybe their season's finished early, maybe they're not making championships.
Yeah.
So they'll kind of trickle in, but our start date will be around May 5th next year. It's a very stressful time because usually VNL starts about a week after that.
Yeah.
So there's times when it's like, hey, we got 5 days and we're playing VNL with the full team, but maybe I've had 12 people in the gym since the start of April.
Yeah.
So it just really depends. They trickle in, and then there's like usually a full team start, but I can't say I've ever had the full team on the very first day.
Yeah.
And it's such a stressful time because you don't know, you're at the mercy of some of these leagues and clubs, and you really want to respect that because that's their careers and that's
Right.
where they make the money. So,
Yep.
But then you don't know, like, hey, how are they coming in? Are there lingering injuries? You want them to have the mental and physical break that they need.
Yeah. So I think that's like a really stressful time of the year because, you're trying to navigate, them coming off a really long pro season, and they have to go pretty much straight into an international season. But the international season, yeah, it's start of May till
Yeah.
it varies, but it's usually around October.
And I've had a couple of guys from the U.S. on, Eric Shoji, Micah Christensen, talking about when they get together, that first practice, it is just like all the friends, the brothers are getting together, and Shaina and Vicki were talking about the same thing. As a coach, you must we're not getting anything done today.
We've worked really hard at what we call re-entry, which is because early on in the quad, we would come together and it was like, they were really excited to see each other. We've always had a close knit group, but the volleyball was not very good. It was like, it was awkward. We weren't on the same page. So over the last 2 years, we worked really hard at re-entry to keep that human connection throughout the year. We would meet once a month online.
Nice.
With our performance coach. One summer we had guest speakers from other national teams across Canada who had been to the Olympics. And usually we want to always talk to Olympians. So we'd run these like monthly sessions to stay connected. And then this year, because we know they love the social side, we actually start the first day with we do have like a team meeting, like where it's not volleyball. But prior to that, bought them all Starbucks so they could just kind of sit and have a chat and keep it really casual so they could do the social stuff.
Yeah.
We could do the team meeting and then we could get to court. And our re-entry, I think, has been better and better the last 2 years. But yeah, I mean, they're so excited to see each other. It's great seeing everyone after such a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, culture is so important to a team. And, as the head coach, as the assistant coming in and then you took over, was the culture already there to where you wanted it to be? Or did you have sort of your own mind of where you wanted the culture of your team to be?
Yeah, I think culture's always a work in progress. I think that, we went from number 18 in the world to number 8 and we're starting to play catch up with those standards, habits, and behaviors. I think, so that's always a work in progress. It was more like the mindset shift that I think was really important for us this quad, and just that creating that belief in that we can do this and this is what it needs to look like. And I think that we tackled that early on, and the culture is forever improving. I think it's in a very different place than where it was 4 years ago. And I hope that in the next few years, we'll be in a different place to where we are now, for sure.
All right. And now, with such a mix of people from, playing at all levels, at all stages of their, of life, how do you maintain sort of a balance and sort of keeping everybody on the same page? It's got to be tough.
That is the toughest part of the job. I think, you work with so much staff, and remember, we don't just have our A team, we have our B team as well. And we have our National Excellence Program, and that system and program alignment is not just from a tactical standpoint, but also has to be in like the behaviors and the standards we talk about. I think that's all. I don't think we're perfect at this. I think it's, it's clarity of vision, it's clarity of expectations, and then being consistent in holding people accountable. And that makes for some really hard conversations and some really hard, difficult decisions in a profession where, there's so much passion and heart in it. So I think that clarity around those three things and being really consistent in everything you do is crucial. Now, that's the piece that we've got to make sure we keep doing. And it's hard because, these are people's careers and you're making decisions that impact them personally. But I'd like to think that as long as I'm the head coach, I'm going to make decisions that are best for the team, and they're not going to always be what I want. They're not always going to be what an individual wants, but I have to do what's best for the team. And that's hard because that's not always seen that way.
Yeah.
So I'd say that is your greatest challenge. And I think with a staff, the consistency of staff we've had over the last few years, they can help me with that message. So I feel like we're just scratching the surface right now.
And another unique challenge to, coaching at the level that you're at is your ideal goal is always 4 years out. Keeping how do you sort of project or predict and balance that sort of like 4 years from now? Okay, every year, balancing and managing those chunks of, short-term goals versus long-term goals.
Well, we always say like the big carrots, the Olympics, the World Championships. That's what gets you out of bed on a rainy day. Like that's your motivator on the tough days, but that's not what you think about every day. So setting goals early on, like not just competition goals of winning and losing, but ours are more process oriented goals. So when we go into the gym, we'll outline what are the things we want to achieve in this training block. And it's usually something that we can measure. And then we go back and we self-evaluate and measure that. So I think that's really important. Our mental performance coach talks a lot about task focus. What is the Olympics are there, World Championships are there. This is what's going to drive us. But what's our task right now?
Yeah.
Our task right now is to be better high ball setters and attackers. Okay. So then we evaluate, have we achieved our task? Okay. What's the next task? And that's how we really try and operate in our gym. And it's really easy to get into a game too, to go, I just have to win this game. We just have to win. Oh my goodness, we're losing. We have to. And it's like, no. Okay. Come back to what's our job right now? We need to side out. Okay, we need to manage our seams better, get the ball high into the middle of the court. Let's run our offense. Okay. And so I just think that's how we try and tackle the quad. And early on, when we were 18 in the world and we knew we had to be inside the top 10 to qualify, we always knew that. We outlined it at the very start of every year. This is how we qualify. This is who goes. So we need to be here. Like, yeah, that's the big driver. When you're not sure if you want to get out of bed and get to that early practice, that's your driver. But this is what today looks like. This is what we're going to focus on this week. VNL, it started off where we wanted to just not get relegated in our first VNL. And you know what? Had there not been COVID, we would have been relegated, but they did no relegations. And you know what? This would be a very different story.
Yeah.
But we were the last challenger team in 2021. But there was COVID, so we didn't get relegated. And then it was, okay, we want to stay in. And when we stayed into VNL, we set this goal of staying in VNL. Sorry if I'm getting off track on this.
That's all right. It's your podcast. We're going wherever you want to take it.
We were in 2022, we were in VNL and we just want to stay in. And we were actually like one win away from getting into the top 8 and going to VNL finals. Oh. But foot came off the pedal because we'd achieved our goal. We were safe, right? And that was a huge learning for staff and athletes. It's like, we got to set new goals as we start to achieve our goals. Mm-hmm. And so we went into World Championships that year. Our goal was to get to the second round. Like Canada had never been to the second round. Wow. Then we got to the second round and we're like, I remember having, talking to the athletes and staff and we're like, right, now we're getting into the top 8. Like we are getting into quarterfinals, and we didn't make it, but we did get 10th in World Championships, highest finish ever for Canada. And it was this, mindset of like, okay, we've achieved it. Let's keep going. And I think that change in 2022 is what really set us up for success in 23 and 24. Yeah. It's like, okay, we can have this big goal, break it down into small goals. But if you achieve that small goal, don't be satisfied. What's next? And really, really name it.
Excellent. And now the other unique thing you have to do is, sort of managing your players, your young ones. Who are we keeping our eye on? Who's playing now? And then, convincing, like, is there a hard job? Do you have a hard job of convincing pros to, hey, come play for Team Canada? Or if they hesitate, their heart's not in it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have a hard time convincing. people to play for Canada.
Yeah.
I'm not in the business of convincing. I think our job is too hard and their job is too hard and the lifestyle is too hard. If you don't feel this in your bones, it's not for you.
Yeah.
But what I think we've really done this last quad is when I first came in, we would have like junior and youth national teams. They would go out and go to university, NCAA, youth sport, pro, and then we kind of hope they'd show back in our gym at tryout time. We don't do that anymore. So from the time they join one of our programs at 15, 16 years old, we track them.
Yeah.
We know where they're playing. We're watching them on volumetrics. We're talking to coaches, and depending on where they sit on our depth chart,
Yeah.
they might get a visit, a phone call, a Zoom, or they might just get an email to the coach, or we might just know where they are.
Yeah.
Right. So we track the athletes. We ensure they know what opportunities are available to them for their age group. We also ensure that we have multiple entry points. So if you're not identified at 16, we're not naive. Vicky Savard, she probably told you, she came into our gym at 29.
Right.
She didn't apply. I saw her on Instagram and I'm like, who is that? And then I messaged her, I'm like, why have you played for Canada? Nope, come to our gym. We want to do a tryout. She was like all in.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have this open process throughout the whole development pathway, we would miss out on late bloomers, people who just weren't recognized. So we really make a point of knowing who's out there and recognizing we don't know who everyone is. So we'll always be open. And then the young ones, I think because there's been some clarity on what the pathway would look like, and there's way more opportunity for the young ones coming through, they stay engaged with the program. They're getting more experience, they're getting more exposure, and so they engage with us a lot more. I'm very proud of what we've done with our development pathway. I'm super proud of our next gen program, and we have an excellent next gen coach. So we know we don't convince anyone. We hope that we definitely do our best to make sure we're not hoping anymore.
All right. And now, as that, head coach, you have those difficult conversations of letting people know it's time we move in different directions. But at the flip side of that, you have those conversations of letting that player know you've achieved your dream. Do you have any memorable stories like I told, XYZ and she just, oh my God, she was just so excited, or anyone that sticks out?
I mean, I've got chills thinking about obviously, Vicky Savard is a cool story. I'm sure she's told you about that. That's a cool story. But this year, in our next gen team, after we didn't qualify, the senior A staff decided to take the B team to Pan Am Cup. And we mainly because we wanted to work with the younger talent. We wanted to get a feel for who might be in consideration next quad. Yeah. And we also wanted to spend another tour together as staff before the summer was over. And there's a young middle who is from Whitehorse, Yukon. Oh, wow. Okay. She plays at MRU. Her name's Emma Boyd. And so Emma, if you're watching this, I'm totally going to tell them about your story. And she tried out for our next gen team in 2023, didn't make it. Our senior B team didn't make it. And we were like, who is this kid? Like, she's super athletic, like big size, super physical, but not super polished yet. Because if anyone knows, like Yukon's a territory in Canada and it's super small, not a big volleyball community. Can't say they're producing a ton of volleyball players. So anyway, she tries out this summer and we're like, let's take her. Like, let's take her. And she just got better and better and better. And she didn't make the first B team event. But then the second B team event, she was selected, and I brought her into the office, and this is where people are finding out if they're making the roster or not. And I'm like, Emma, we're going to pack your bags. You've made the roster. And she was like instantly emotional. And she's like, I've got to call my dad. And she was instantly emotional. And then I'm emotional because she's emotional. And I remember just saying to her, I go, in 8 years time, when you're still playing for Canada and you've have years of pro under your belt, please never forget this feeling, just how grateful you are to play for Canada and wear the maple leaf. Yeah. And she's not the only one that reacts like that. There's lots of stories. That's the most recent one, but that feeling is awesome. Oh, it's so awesome cool. Because and you know what? She had a really good competition as well. She awesome. Surprised everyone.
Oh, that's so excellent. And then, we've talked about the VNLs a lot. I've had a lot of players who've played in the VNLs, and they talk about what a wonderful job they do from, housing them, feeding them, providing great places for them to play. What was your experience on, this past year's VNLs?
playing at VNL. VNL is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they don't always get it right, but it is a marquee event and they treat you like it's a marquee event. So you get to go, you know, you're looked after, you stay in nice places, you stay in nice venues. There's a real fanfare around the event. It's promoted well. It's run very professionally. VNL is the highlights. Like if you remove the volleyball and not even talk about winning and losing matches,
Yep.
you just go, this is such a professional competition. That's VNL.
Yeah.
It's very much volleyball on the world stage. And then you go to continental events, and that's where I think the athletes should always start.
Yeah, because you're not like VNL's was like Rio, you were in Tokyo and Texas, you know. I think was that the
Yes, Texas was phenomenal. And before that, you know, Hong Kong was one of my favorite rounds. We didn't play well, but it was a great venue. We've been in Turkey, another great venue. There's just been they tend to, and gosh, Bangkok, their fans are incredible. Like they're incredible. So I do think that they put them in real hotbeds for volleyball, which adds to the experience. And you're very well looked after. It's a very well run event. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, we caught the VNLs for the men's in Ottawa. We need to get the women's in Ottawa. It was, you know, we had 8,000 people at, you know, it was fantastic.
Let's just say, watch this space.
Okay.
Watch this space.
Excellent.
I think in January they should do some announcements, but good. I have a feeling you might be seeing Canada, the women on home turf. For
excellent. Yeah, because, you know, from where we live in Connecticut, it was a 6-hour drive, and you know, my daughter and I, it was just top notch, man. It was best volleyball we've ever seen.
Yeah, you know, it's VNL. It's such a great event. They do a really good job of putting it on, and they make it very special for the athletes. And it's very much athlete focused. They put a lot around the athletes and how they're highlighted. You know, I coached in the old World Grand Prix when there was there was group 1, group 2, group 3, lots of teams. And yeah, it was okay. You know, it was well run, but VNL is a whole different beast. And it's a very, very interesting thing to be a part of.
All right. So I got one question. So we were doing a live stream with Amy Pauley, who coaches the Orlando Valkyries.
I've met Amy.
And we were watching the match where you had Shaina in a Libero jersey. And we're like, why is Shaina why was Shaina in a Libero jersey? So yeah, we can delete this after, but I was just like, why? And it's like,
no, I was asked about it. It had nothing to do with Shaina being in a Libero jersey. I had chatted to Shaina and just said, hey, I want to dress one of the Liberos in a regular jersey, which means someone had to wear a Libero jersey.
Okay.
And I said, the team really needs this. I know it means that you won't be able to be subbed on. And she was like, no question. If this is what the team needs, this is what I'm going to do. And so in that round, if you saw, we had Julia Murmon in a regular jersey, because we were struggling a little bit on pass and first contact.
Yeah.
And we've always looked at different strategies to improve our first contact, whether that's shifting or, you know, having someone leave the space. And what this allowed us to do was then keep the Libero on, but sub our second Libero on a regular jersey and have them both on at the same time. And then when we took the Libero out, we kept our Libero in the regular jersey on for rotation and able to put our Libero back on for a different athlete. So it gave us more rotations with more defensive passing specialists. So it actually had nothing to do with Shaina. It had to do with our Libero who we wanted to take out of the Libero jersey to strengthen our passing lineup.
Oh,
I was actually asked about it quite a few times in the interviews for VNL. And one of them asked me, is that because you want Julia Murmon to run the pipe? Because Julia is an outside hitter for University of Toronto. She's a great hitter. And I sort of giggled. I'm like, Julia would love that question. But no, we're not doing it for Julia to run the pipe. We're doing it to give us more rotation of passing specialists.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. I love that. On that current team, who was the tension breaker? Who was the joker? I'm guessing it's probably Shaina, but who?
Shaina. I mean, Shaina is hilarious. She's hilarious. I would say Vicky's also another joker. She'll say all kinds of things. I think both of them are very much the tension breakers, but Hilary Johnson as well. We have quite a few who I'd say everyone has a pretty good sense of humor. We don't take ourselves too seriously. I'd say definitely Shaina, Vicky, Hilary, Casey Jost is pretty funny as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to offend anyone who is funny and not. Lane Van Buskirk is also a character.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few of them.
Excellent. All right. And now, as for yourself, did you have any superstitions or pregame rituals that you do before a match?
I mean, I don't think it's a superstition. Me and my assistant coach always have a Coke Zero before the game. Coke sponsor me. And I don't know. My coaches tend to like, we like to sit on, in VNL, you can access the bench quite early.
Yeah.
We sit on the bench, and there's a time where, if I'm quiet and I have my iPad open, which means I'm just reviewing the game plan and some notes, no one will talk to me, and they know to leave me alone because I'm just looking at my final preparations.
Yeah.
But as soon as that iPad closes, we keep it really light, and the staff know, like, we want to keep it light before the game. So sitting on the bench with Vinny, Matt, and Gabo, like, just once that iPad closes in the last like 10 to 15 minutes, we want to more have a joke. Vinny's usually up to something, and we're usually having a laugh, but no big superstitions. I feel like the job's pretty done by that. I used to struggle with like getting nervous before a game, and our MPC, our mental performance coach, worked a lot with me on just really deciding, okay, what's my job in this moment? And if my preparations are done, which they should be by then, really it's about staying light and staying relaxed. And so that's what we try and do as staff. But that Coke Zero, it always happens before I get there, though.
All right, we got to get Coke sponsorship then.
I know. I tagged them in a post once, and they responded. It was like the highlight of my career.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, something I also noticed that you only see when you're at the VNLs is at the referee stand before the match. It's like a big social gathering for all these players. It's just like everyone's got their elastics out, but they're like just everyone coming together and just having a big old social.
Yeah, I'd probably say, like, yeah, they're, at the stands. I don't think there's a lot of talking going on between the players. I'd say that doesn't happen, but amongst our players, yeah, they all prepare differently. And we always want the players to understand in those moments, they can be really selfish about like what they need. So while they are working with their bands and warming up, I'd say it's the referees who are social before the game. The players tend to keep a bit quiet.
Now I have a coach's question from a high school. So, volleyball match can be back and forth, at our high school, she calls it keeping the mojo on our side. If we lose mojo, it goes to the other side, and we got to find a way to get mojo back. What are some things you do when you feel the game shifting to try to get, the mojo back to your side?
Gosh, that's challenging. I always think that the timeouts, I think the purpose of a timeout, there's only two real purposes. One's to either remind them of the game plan of what needs to happen in the next point or the next game, phase of the game, or to have an emotional impact. And so I think that really varies, and that comes back to understanding your players and what drives them. If you're a people person, that's what you're driven by. It's like the team needs you. You're gonna appeal to that side of them. If they're process driven, it's finding confidence in the game plan. This is what we're gonna do next. And then if you're performance driven, that's another one as well. I think it really just depends. I've used different tactics in different ways. Some has been like to a little bit like, this isn't good enough. And maybe that worked, maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
It really depends in the moment. It depends on the person. It's the reassuring them that I have confidence in our ability to do it. And sometimes it's just firing them up. I know we have one athlete who loves a little bit of a joke. So we might laugh about an error and then have a bit of a joke and send her back there. So I don't think there's one way to do it. I think it comes back to understanding like what drives your athletes. And honestly, you have to get it wrong to get it right. So you might try something and it might fail. I remember in Australia, we were losing a game, and I think I fired up at the referee, which I don't do very often. And I went hard, and not a proud moment, but my team absolutely responded very poorly.
Oh no.
Did not respond well to that. And we were in Pan Am Cup this last year, and there was a referee situation, which I had responded quite strongly again, and team fired the team up.
Oh, wow.
So I think two different teams,
Yep.
even with our senior A team probably wouldn't respond well. I've never fired up at a referee in FIVB, but our team probably wouldn't respond really well. But you need to know what drives them. Do they need to feel like you're in it?
Yeah.
Do they need to feel that you believe in them? Do they find confidence in plans? And then some people just need to be lighthearted.
Yeah.
So there's not one task.
All right. There we go.
It's super challenging. So it's not just one way to do it. And it's super challenging, and you're going to get it wrong.
All right. Love it. Now, something I had a discussion with somebody over the summer, and they were talking about, shoulder swings. In
Mhm.
baseball, they keep track of pitchers throwing. And I
Mhm.
didn't even think about this, but volleyball for your hitters, they're swinging that ball. It's swinging so many times so hard. Do you guys keep track of shoulder swings or anything like that at this level?
No, and you know what? That's something that it's a subjective number. So we keep track of jumps,
Yeah.
and then obviously we know, if you take away from stats, you take away the blocks. You know that those are the ones that don't have the arm swing component. So you can take a pretty good guess of how many swings they're doing. What you don't get is like if they're playing pepper and warm up, but
Yeah.
in theory, maybe they're not swinging as hard as you normally would.
Right.
But do we have a tracking device for swings? No. We make some educated assumptions on those numbers, and that comes back to the loading plan. But that's one of the first things that I also said to them, like early on in the load management piece, is like, we don't track swings. Like, why are we not tracking swings? But you can make some educated assumptions. Like I said,
Yeah.
if we have a total jumps of 150 and we know that they have, 30 block attempts, well, then we know that they're probably at 120 swings. And then if you go into warm up, that's probably another, 20 swings off pepper. So you can make some educated guesses.
Yeah.
Some of load management is just, while we try and be as exact as possible with jump numbers, you can around like other pieces of load management, you can be a little bit more subjective, I guess.
I guess more of the bigger pictures. That's something that younger or other coaches at like high school club should be wary about or keep an eye on how many, just so that but then you got to deal with the parents like, hey, how come you're not setting my child and all, all that goes along with that.
Yeah. That's a really tricky question. I do think that there should be some level of load management for these younger athletes. It gets tricky because they're doing other sports, they're playing for other teams. You don't have the devices for the staff to track it. But once again, you can make some educated guesses around, okay, if they know, if you have a really big tournament coming up and you know that they're going to roughly for each position, okay, an outside hitter, you're going to jump 80 times in force, whatever.
Yeah.
Guess how many jumps they're going to need to, how do you build them up to that so that they can play that tournament safely? I do think we should be better at that at the club level, depending on the level of club and how often you're training them.
Mm-hmm.
But the swings, because we don't have a device that tracks specifically the swings, that gets a bit trickier. And I'd say the biomechanics of that swing is probably more important than the number of swings, but that's just an opinion, no scientific data on that. But I do think if we can do a better job of teaching them like throwing early on, like so many of our athletes at a young age just get to this pike, he's all shoulder. It's like, okay, can we teach them that thoracic rotation? And we even do throwing programs from the age of 15, like give them a softball, we get them against the wall, we're teaching them how to engage their whole body.
Yeah.
I think if we can do a better job of teaching them that aspect of it, it becomes less about the number. And then, while we don't track the number of swings, we do track like pain. And so we'll look at like shoulder, back, knee, ankle pain. So if our loading looks really good, but like maybe those pain scores are going up, we know that there's a bit of a loading issue.
Yeah.
I do think at the younger levels, we could simplify it more. Is it going to be exact? No. Is it going to stand up for research? No. Yeah. But I do think we can be a little bit more simple.
Right.
And, I see a lot of these teams too, they go to like 2 a day from like, hey, we're going to not play volleyball to all of a sudden, okay, we got to do 2 a day at September. It's like, you are setting them up for injury. So what does that 2 a day look like? What do you want to get out of it? If it's volleyball, you're going to injure them, but is it a fitness thing? Okay, let's do something safe. Get on the bike. Let's swim. Let's, I think there's, some old school ways of doing things that we need to refine a little bit.
Yeah. And
but it's tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you just touched about, kids playing 2 sports and whatnot. And we were talking about this earlier. It's like, that, has the genie is out of the bottle about year-round sport for that specialized player. How do, that's not going back in the bottle. How important is it for, kids to, to take breaks at their, young age level, or even just, pick up a different sport?
I love a multi-sport athlete. I encourage multi-sport athletes. I think we should always make space for a multi-sport athlete. But I do believe it's got to be the athlete's decision. You might have an athlete who's just super passionate about volleyball and only volleyball, and that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. But I think it always needs to be their decision. And that's the hard part. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah.
But ensuring that as sports, like if it's not take other sports. I think we were talking about this, like my sons play lacrosse. When it's not lacrosse season, whatever team he's playing for, are they making space for him to play other sports? Or if he says, well, I'm playing this other sport or I'm playing soccer, that means I'm going to miss every second practice. Are we making space for that? I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I believe in like being committed, but I do think whether we think it's going to happen to our kids or not, they will get burnt out. They'll get a bit bored. But the other most important piece is playing other sports actually trains your body in a different way to do different things. And it's actually better for injury prevention and preparing yourself for the rigors of a higher level sport. So, but it has to be the kid's decision. Yeah. So I don't want to say it's like your kids have to play all these different sports. Well, what does he want to do? What does he or she want to do?
Yeah.
Like ask them, because they need to be driving it. We see a lot of parents be the drivers of athletes' careers. They don't make it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I also, there's a favorite, like one of those, what was it? I saw it on Instagram, and that's where I get all my information apparently, but just about how there's no such thing as a high level or elite 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old. And I know that we are a late starting sport. So that, you know, athletes are mostly 13, 14, 15 when they start, but they aren't elite. They aren't high performance, and they're not meant to be.
Right.
Like I can't sit here and tell you that I know at 15, if your athlete touches this level, that they're going to be a high level player for Canada. I can't. I'd be lying to you. What we know in development is like, we're just going to hedge our bets. So if you're 15 years old and you're touching over 10 feet and you're 6'1", we're going to donate some resources to you. We're going to try and speed up that process and ensure your development is fast tracked. But if you are, you know, not touching that, you could reach the same goals, if not, you know, higher than that person. We're just not ready to sink resources into you yet. And so I just think people who talk about talent ID and say they know, they don't know. They don't know.
Yep, absolutely. And now for you as a coach, you know, over your career, what has been, you know, the most rewarding thing for you about coaching?
A couple things. Like I talk about that connection is really important, but I truly believe that the sum of a team can be far greater than the ability of individuals. And I've seen it. If you put it on paper, player for player, teams shouldn't win, and they do.
Yeah.
And I love that. And when you can make that happen and the connection's right, and you're a part of that, and being a part of that connected team unit, I go, that is extremely rewarding. It's not the accolades or being visible or high profile. It's for me, it's like, here's a challenge. We can get everyone on the same page, and doing it together makes us far stronger and effective than if we did it apart. And that's cool.
All right. And then, you know, what advice do you have for, you know, young coaches who are working with our youth today to, you know, help them to, you know, just advice to be better coaches?
I think it's always important. We always listen as coaches. I think it's important you show you care, but show you care. And this is something I'm always working on, but I think show you care. The other piece is, once they know you care, hold them accountable. No one needs to be given anything that they haven't earned. And I think having the difficult conversations will grow you as a coach, because you'll learn to have them, but the athletes are also going to learn to have them. And that will set them up for life as well as sport, right? I think we sometimes avoid difficult conversations or decisions because parents pay to have them there. Everyone, you know, there's rules around fair play, which I don't have an issue with, but you need to be able to have those difficult conversations and make those difficult decisions. And they'll be so much easier for you if they know that you care. So you have to start off by really showing that you care about them.
All right. So now, fun question. So, I had Eric Shoji on a while ago, and him and Taylor Averill have this thing. What is the toughest position in volleyball? So now, Shannon, what is the toughest position in volleyball? And I've had different answers. So just to give you some background. So I had Mason Briggs on. He talked about it's libero because he's libero. You have one skill. Vicky laughed at that. She said it's one skill.
I don't think it's libero either. And Vicky, what did Vicky say?
Vicky, I think she said it was the outside hitter.
Oh! Okay. I think it's the middle or the setter.
Yeah.
I think left sides and opposites, no. And liberos, I understand. I totally understand the point. Like they can't, if they have a bad day, they have a bad day.
Yeah.
Like they can't regain confidence in other skills. But I think the middle blocker has so much information they have to process, and they have to work so hard with very little reward. And then the setters, I mean, they are the quarterbacks. If your offense isn't running, they're not executing, you're not winning games. So I'd say setter or middle.
All right, there we go.
Can I say 50-50 on those two?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it's your podcast, your rules, you know?
Yeah,
it's all
I would
good.
say either of those positions.
All right.
But I wouldn't say, I'd say opposites the least, then left sides, then liberos, and then middles and setters.
All right. And now, you know, what is your thoughts or opinions on where the state of volleyball is today in Canada?
I mean, it's growing so fast. I love where it's headed, but we have a lot of catching up to do. But then it's like, from what lens am I looking at it? Am I looking at it from a lens of volleyball for all? Like, let's play sport for as long as we can, and, you know, stay connected to community. There's lots of volleyball programs out there for adults and people who aren't playing high performance. So from that lens, we're crushing it. We're doing a good job. We're getting them involved young. We're keeping them involved. We're offering lots of opportunities. But from a high performance standpoint, I think we have a lot of catching up to do. I think we have some catching up to do with the skills we teach and how we teach them, the level of competition. I think that we still have some catching up, and just the connection between, you know, what we do off court to what we do on court. I see some provinces, you know, really doing a good job with that, and other provinces we're still figuring that piece out. So I love where it's gotten to. It's growing every single year, but we still have a lot of work to do. And we're playing against countries where it's their bread and butter.
Right.
They've been playing it from earlier. It's professionalized earlier. They don't have the university system for volleyball, and they have professional leagues, and we have 16, 17-year-olds playing in pro leagues against adults. Ours aren't. Yeah. We have ours going to university, NCAA U Sport, where during that same age, they're playing in Italy A1, and, you know, so right. We have some contextual challenges. Yep.
All right. And now, away from the court, you know, you're busy with 3 kids. What do you enjoy when you have a moment to yourself? If that exists.
Moment to myself. You know, it sounds cliche. I love watching my kids play sports. I go to their practices, and I spend so much of the year where I have to travel, or I get to travel. When I am home, part of the fall, part of the spring, I go and watch. I actually coach my son's U13 lacrosse team.
Wait, hang on. You not only do you coach, you know, professionally, you know, when you're in your spare time, you're coaching lacrosse.
I love it. I love it. I love it because I never played lacrosse, and so I have to try and take some of my coaching principles and apply it to a sport I never played. Yeah, I love it. But I try and I love watching them play. I love watching them practice, and I love seeing them set themselves like some challenges and get after it. I think I have a lot of spare time other than that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for doing this. It was wonderful to meet you and hear your story. But before you go, like with past guests, I looked for you to shout out somebody in your circle that you think should come on and share their volleyball journey.
Well, I absolutely think you should have Glenn Hogue on. All right. Glenn Hogue has been a great mentor, and I think he has so much to share. He's phenomenal. You should have him on your podcast.
All right, there we go. Well, hey, thank you again, and, you know, good luck, you know, this upcoming year.
Thank you so much for having me.